real quick. Watch this, guys. Now, this is when Canada tripped herself, and Caitlin Clark was literally bagging back, giving her room to go because she was already at what? 4 fouls or something like that. 4 fouls. Now what?
Here's that moment again. Caitlin Clark isn't merely asking for a challenge, she's pointing at the monitor, breaking down exactly what happened, desperately trying to get a review. But Stephanie White never even turns toward her. That brief 30-second exchange reveals far more than fans realized. And the unsettling part? This wasn't an isolated incident. It's the same pattern that's been quietly unfolding in Indiana all season.
Worse, Stephanie White wasted a challenge on Sophie Cunningham. To me, her not using any challenges for Caitlin Clark completely is the reason why they lost this game. Caitlin Clark did not play majority of the fourth quarter. She came in, there's 3 minutes and 28 seconds left. She got in foul trouble early. I think she had 3 fouls going into the third quarter. So that there was a telltale sign that, maybe I need to keep a challenge because they clearly have.
Iowa star and Indiana's biggest weapon watched the Fever's 4-game winning streak vanish against Atlanta, but the real story never showed up in the box score. With the game hanging in the balance, Caitlin Clark spent most of the fourth quarter glued to the bench. She didn't return until just 3 minutes and 28 seconds remained. The reason? Foul trouble that kept piling up. She entered the second half carrying 3 fouls, then picked up a highly disputed fourth that changed everything. As momentum shifted and the Dream seized control, Indiana's most important player could only watch. But what happened next is where the controversy deepens. Stephanie White still had a coach's challenge available. Multiple questionable calls involving Clark could have been reviewed. The opportunity was there. The timing was there. Yet when the challenge was finally used, it wasn't for Clark. It wasn't on the call that altered the game's direction. Instead, the challenge went to Sophie Cunningham. And in that moment, one decision raised far more questions than the loss itself.
The question earlier about that challenge that you asked, because I just wasn't a fan of it at that time for a play that to us at the time. I mean, think about how long that review went. Yeah, you know, it wasn't cut and dry, and now you've got one of your best players sitting on the bench with 5 personals.
Even the announcers had to call out.
Here's what made the situation impossible to ignore. Even the broadcast crew was stunned. In real time, they began questioning the coach's decisions on air, specifically why no challenge was used on calls involving the team's biggest star. Think about that. Commentators rarely criticize coaching choices during a game unless something looks undeniably wrong. Then came the turning point. Just 52 seconds remained in the half. Caitlin Clark was already carrying 3 fouls when Alicia Gray suddenly lost her footing and went down. Replays appeared to show little to no contact. Clark was already moving back on defense, far from the action. Yet the whistle sounded. Another foul, her 4th. That was the moment everyone expected a challenge. The timing was perfect. The stakes were obvious. But there was one problem. Stephanie White no longer had that option. The challenge had already been spent earlier on a play that barely impacted the game, a review so clear-cut and insignificant that the decision came almost immediately. And when the moment that truly mattered arrived, there was nothing left to use.
Now, starting during her last years in Iowa, Caitlin Clark seemed destined to follow a similar journey to icon status. Her start to her WNBA career has already been record-setting. The only thing she was lacking, though, was that long-awaited signature shoe. Well, guess what? It dropped today. Check out Nike's Caitlin 1. And you see those stacked swooshes over there? You see how they're look like C's? Well, Nike says they were designed to mimic her initials, which you see up on the tongue. And then even the nodes on the outside also look like C's. Now, Clark becomes the 5th active WNBA player with her own.
Then came something even harder to dismiss. Sports Illustrated published an article focused entirely on the issue. Robin Lundberg didn't hint at it. He addressed it directly, arguing that coaching Caitlin Clark brings unique challenges and that Stephanie White keeps letting crucial moments slip away. This wasn't coming from a random social media account or a fringe opinion. It was a major sports outlet publicly questioning the decisions of a WNBA head coach. The article highlighted several situations throughout the season where questionable fouls were called against Clark and opportunities to challenge them were right there. Yet the challenges never came. Not in one game. Not in 2. Again and again, the same scenario unfolded. Different night, same outcome. As the examples piled up, what once looked like isolated decisions started resembling something much bigger. At this point, critics aren't calling it bad luck or coincidence. They're calling it a pattern, one that's becoming impossible to ignore.
Will not be able to buy them until October. Michael Jordan.
So that was ESPN letting us know that Caitlin Clark is one of them ones. Now, this is a controversial person right here. A lot of people don't like him. Even me, I don't really care for him, but he do make good articles for Sports Illustrated. That is Robin Lundberg. So Robin Lundberg is getting off the bandwagon, and he wrote an article today. He says, coaching Caitlin Clark come with challenges. Stephanie White can't hold to them. Indiana Fever coach Stephanie White could stand to use some of her challenges on the calls made against who? Caitlin Clark. He goes on to say, coaching the
Now consider the bigger picture. Every team in the league has seen the same thing unfold. Caitlin Clark continues to draw questionable foul calls, often on minimal contact, while absorbing heavy physical play at the other end. It's been one of the most talked about storylines surrounding her season. That means any coaching staff should enter a game expecting a critical foul decision could eventually land on their star point guard. And if that's the expectation, the strategy seems obvious. Keep a challenge available for the moment it truly matters. You don't burn it early on a routine sequence involving a reserve player. You hold it for the call that could change the game. You protect the player your entire franchise is built around. That's the kind of decision coaches are expected to make. Yet time after time, the opposite appears to happen. The challenge is gone before the biggest moment arrives, and when Clark needs it most, there's nothing left to use.
This play pulled up for y'all. Was this
Still goes against Caitlin Clark. What are these refs even watching right now?
Foul trouble already here in the first half.
look? Yep.
Canada slips and hits the floor, but the whistle.
So that was this play right here. Now Caitlin Clark is storming, telling Stephanie she's yelling. She's definitely yelling at Stephanie and them to challenge the play. To me, based on the evidence, based on everything that has happened this season, by them not challenging Caitlin plays.
But here's where the story takes an even stranger turn. Go back and examine the entire season. Search for a single moment when Stephanie White used a coach's challenge to overturn a foul called on Caitlin Clark. Just one example. The answer may surprise you. Again and again, the opportunities appeared, yet the challenge never seemed to come in those moments. Meanwhile, Clark's reactions tell their own story. The cameras have repeatedly caught her walking toward the bench, pointing at the replay screen, breaking down exactly what happened and urging for a review. The evidence is right there on the broadcast, yet the outcome never changes. The request is made, the discussion happens, and the game moves on. Not once in a while, not in isolated situations. The same sequence keeps resurfacing, game after game, creating a pattern that has left fans asking the same question. Why does the response always seem to be the same?
Just when it comes to Clark, specifically not using her coach's challenges on fouls called against the star point guard. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think Stephanie White has ever used a challenge on one of Caitlin Clark challenges this entire season. I don't think she used one specifically for a Caitlin foul. Goes on to say, this stood out in the team's loss against Atlanta Dream. One that saw Caitlin Clark have to sit for a stretch in the fourth quarter due to foul trouble. There was a clear instance toward the end of the first half where White should have challenged a foul against Caitlin Clark with 52 seconds left. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken,
Now focus on what happened immediately after the Alicia Gray sequence. Caitlin Clark appeared to recognize the problem instantly. From her perspective, Gray had simply lost her footing, so Clark headed straight toward the bench looking for a challenge. Watch the footage closely. The most revealing part isn't the whistle, it's the reaction that follows. Stephanie White's body language seems to tell the story before a single word is spoken. There's no hesitation, no visible debate, no sign that a review is being seriously weighed. The exchange appears finished almost as soon as it begins, but there was something Clark likely didn't realize in that moment. The challenge was already gone. Earlier in the game, it had been used on the Sophie Cunningham play, a review many felt was straightforward long before officials made their decision. So when Clark turned to the bench searching for help, there was no option left. No review to request. No challenge to save her from foul trouble. The one tool designed for that exact moment had already disappeared, leaving the situation unresolved before it even had a chance to be questioned.
Is fighting back towards Caitlin by not challenging her plays, putting her in bad situations, taking her on the ball, off the ball, using Kelsey Mitchell, running it with Kelsey Mitchell. And that could be a strong reason as to why they're not challenging the plays, man. There's no other reason. Caitlin Clark wants out of Indy, and the Indy front office knows it. I am 100% convinced. You can't sit up here and tell me that if your star player on any level of sports, and you got a chance to challenge a play, and you don't challenge that play against the best player on your team, you don't like the best player on your team, and you want them in foul trouble. You don't want them in the game. That's the only answer. Stephanie White, the front office, don't want Caitlin in the game because Caitlin don't want to be in Indiana. That's the only explanation I could think of. Get down in the comment section right now. Let me know y'all thoughts about this. Keep them bells on. And until next time, man, shake the damn.
So now we're left with the question nobody seems comfortable asking. Why does this keep happening? Why does a coach repeatedly let these moments pass when her biggest star is the one paying the price? Why are valuable challenges used elsewhere, only for there to be nothing left when questionable fouls suddenly change the game? And why has the same storyline surfaced again and again throughout the season? There are two explanations that immediately come to mind. The first is simple. Maybe Stephanie White is making poor in-game decisions. Maybe challenge management isn't her strength. Maybe the rotation, timing, and late-game choices that have frustrated fans all year are part of a larger coaching problem. There's evidence people can point to. Several decisions have raised eyebrows, and some have arguably cost Indiana opportunities to win. On the surface, that explanation fit, but there's a problem with it. Even coaches having difficult seasons usually understand one thing: protect your franchise player. That's not advanced analytics or complicated strategy. That's basketball basic, which leads to the second possibility, the one generating far more speculation. What if there's something happening behind closed doors that fans aren't seeing? What if tensions exist that haven't become public? What if decisions are being influenced by factors that have nothing to do with what happens on the court? No one has presented proof of that, and there's no confirmed information supporting such claims. But when the same situations repeat over and over, people naturally begin searching for answers. That's why every new foul, every ignored request for a review, and every puzzling decision attracts even more attention. At some point, fans stop seeing isolated incidents and start wondering whether they're witnessing a larger pattern. The unfortunate reality is that everyone loses when those questions remain unanswered. Clark faces the scrutiny, the team faces the criticism, and the